Muhammad's early life before his prophecy. So the first thing you'll often see mentioned is the year of the elephant. Arabian history attributes the year in which the Prophet was born to another major event reported as the year of the elephant. In this year, the king of Yemen, known as Abiquiu, sent troops to Mecca to destroy the Kaaba, which included elephants. So that was something unusual at the time, so it was remembered by those terms. It's believed in Islamic tradition, it's believed that the elephants were pushed back, that they were approaching the Kaaba to destroy it, but by divine force, by God's will, that the elephants prostrated, or they sat down every time they would come near the Kaaba, and were prevented from fulfilling the task of destroying it. Then the king of Yemen, Abiquiu, tries to make a deal with the leader of the Quraysh, who at the time was the Prophet Muhammad's grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, and he says to him, how about we split, people can come to pilgrimage to Mecca for some time, they can come to Yemen for some time, otherwise I'm going to destroy your temple. And he said, I just want my camels to be safe, and I'm not worried about the temple. And he said, well, how are you not worried about the Kaaba? And he said, well, according to the way it's reported, is that he said, well, God is going to take care of the Kaaba, whereas I'm the Lord of the camels. And at that point, Abiquiu was prevented from actually fulfilling his task of destroying the Kaaba. So this is something that is known in early Arabian history, and events are often recalled as before the year of the elephant or after the year of the elephant. Okay. His early childhood. So the Prophet Muhammad's father was Abdullah. He dies while the Prophet's mother is still pregnant, Amina. So Amina is a single mom. She raises her son Muhammad until he's 6 years old, and then Amina dies, and then Prophet Muhammad is taken by his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, and he's adopted by him. And then Abdul Muttalib dies, and he's adopted by his uncle, Abu Talib. So the Prophet has experienced orphanhood, and he lost his grandfather, and so he's both an orphan and a person of a noble family at the same time. And this cultivates within him a sense of kindness, of being able to appreciate people who are in difficult situations, as well as a sense of dignity and nobility at the same time. Yeah, and I have this. At the age of 8, young Muhammad had experienced fatherlessness, poverty, solitude, and the death of his mother and then his grandfather. As a shepherd, young Muhammad learned solitude, patience, contemplation, and watchfulness. So as a youth, he becomes a shepherd. Another encounter that you'll find in the early history, early narrative of the life of Prophet Muhammad is the story of Bahira the monk. So Muhammad, when he was a young boy, around 9, 12, he started to accompany his uncle to greater Syria, where the caravans used to go to trade with the in the north side and bring goods to Arabia and then bring goods back up there. So tradition has it that Bahira was in the city of Bosra, and which is about an hour or so outside of Damascus, and that he was a Christian monk, and he noticed something in a caravan that was passing, and that there was a shade that was always following that caravan, and that when the caravan stopped, the trees then swayed to shade the caravan. So he said to himself, there's somebody important in that group. He invited them all for dinner, and he looked at everybody, and nobody there seemed special or extraordinary. And he said, is everybody here? And they said, everybody's here except the boy that's taking care of our sheep. We left him because he was the youngest one. And he said, and so Bahira says, I want him too. I want everybody here. So they go and they call him, and Bahira, the Christian monk, recognizes in him signs of prophecy that this is a special kid that will have something unusual about him in the future. So he tells his uncle Abu Talib, take care of this boy. Another important event is what's known as the pact of chivalry, or the Hilf al-Fudul. So this is a situation where a man from the tribe of Sahm of Yemen was trading in Mecca, and after the Meccan took what was due to him, he didn't give the Yemeni merchant his money. So, and the Yemeni had no recourse or tribal support as a foreigner in Mecca. So he appeals to the tribe of Quraysh, all of the Quraysh, for justice. Zubair ibn Abd al-Muttalib, the Prophet's uncle or great uncle, and various leaders of the Arabs of Mecca gathered to vow to protect the rights of the oppressed among them and to stand for justice. Muhammad and Abu Bakr at the time were teenagers. And the pact is written on parchment and placed inside the Kaaba. So many years later, when the Prophet Muhammad becomes a prophet in Mecca, he says, I witnessed a confederacy in the house of Abdullah bin Jada'an. It was more appealing to me than herds of cattle. Even now, in the period of Islam, I would respond positively to attending such a meeting if I were invited. Now, Riza Aslan, anyone hear of Riza Aslan? He's got a few interesting books. He's been on TV a few times. So this is significant in that he comments saying, Islam embraces values derived from the human conscience that are also extant outside of the Islamic tradition. This is because Muhammad had acknowledged a pact before revelation in the pre-Islamic era. So in other words, the Prophet Muhammad, years later, after proclaiming Islam, he is still acknowledging the validity of this oath and the importance of it. And he's not saying, oh, well, they weren't Muslim. I'm only going to have a pact among Muslims, or that good and right and wrong and justice, these are only things that can be derived from Islamic scripture or from the Muslim community. That's not his perspective at all. And so many Muslims use this particular narrative in the history of the life of the Prophet to derive this type of an example, and that this is an example of working together with peoples of other faiths to achieve justice and good in the world, and that this is something that is an example in the life of the Prophet. So I would think that perhaps the way the seerah is viewed in the Muslim tradition is maybe similar to the way biblical scriptures are viewed in Christianity, no? So people look at the life of Jesus, right, to derive lessons for them as Christians, right? Why is this significant? What happened here? When this incident happened, how did Jesus respond? So for Muslims, to understand how Muslims understand their role in the world today, having a basic understanding or a foundation of the life of the Prophet Muhammad is also, it fulfills a similar role. Does that make sense? Anyone agree, disagree? Yeah? Because most people today don't read the Bible verse for verse literally, right? There's stories and lessons, and it's a way, it's a book of lessons to understand how to be, how to act, how to interact with people in the world, right? So, and by reading biblical accounts, we understand how Christianity functions in the world. So this is why this is important as well.